on the replay, anything that you're saying now, they'll be able to hear. So just so you're aware of that.
Good to know.
It can and will be held against you. Okay, so let me just make sure everything is copacetic. It'll take a couple of minutes and we'll get to know each other in front of everybody.
How have you been?
I've been good. I've been real good.
Good.
Obviously, there's been a lot of energy. There's one, there's two.
I was just thinking, wow, the two of us, we've come a long way. I mean, I think I've probably been following you since the beginning. I mean,
Really?
yeah,
Well,
you were homeless and just and
yeah, that well, you know, there's always multiple meanings, right? Multiple purposes. And so today was a very, you know, it's just like one day after the other, right? It's just, I keep saying there's a sequential synchronicity occurring, like reading a book. You go from one day or one episode to the next day, and it used to be like there was no connection, but now everything's connected. So on a couple of notes, with you coming into the field today, I've had this understanding that there'll be a time come when, you know, like Soul Speaks 5D, but as a reflection of everything, there won't be any schedules, right? There won't be any setting dates and times. And so it's funny because there's been a lot of empty space. This has been a slower month, you know, for us. I mean, we typically do about 60 to 70 shows, maybe 75. And I don't know what the number is, but the energies have been that which that space was needed. So then Morgan, last night, I was trying to get in touch with her, my night, and she wrote me back, and I was in the kitchen juicing, and she was like, I just put something out that is gonna, I don't know what she said, but like, I just really did it this time or something. And I went, well, I wonder what that's about after we have all just been through. I didn't know what it was. So I read it, and it was incredible code, incredible frequency, emerging of the human and the soul, having to do with sexual molestation, particularly the children. But it was just the way it came out. And then all these downloads came in, and I had a massive lucid dreams and massive purging and just all these epiphanies. And in the rhythm of all that, I had gotten up from the lucid dream, and I couldn't move off the couch. So I was just sitting there, and I happened to come across this old video from 6 years ago, and which was about 3 weeks after I started doing videos, 3 weeks after I met Morgan. You know, go figure that. It all started right when we met. But so anyway, I put it up, and I just put some words to it, and then later on I came across your comment, and your comment was something like, I've been, you know, following you for a long time, and I just kind of stay in the background. I think you said my light language just came out and something else. And my friend said, you should go on the show with Todd. And you said something very humble. I don't know what it was. I said, come on, let's do it. And you're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, let's do it now. Right. And that's how I think it's going to flow. So it was a multiple kind of experience, multifaceted kind of experience. And it just flows. Everything seems to be flowing if we just shut the F up and get out of the way. But I just want to say that the energy, and I don't know you yet, but I'm totally tapped in, like so many of us, and trusting that intuition and telepathy. But you represent, your words, your energy represent what is, regardless of the distortion and the ridiculousness and the crazy stuff happening in Australia and other places, it's the energy that's coming through. And we received, what was it, 3 years ago in Georgia, when Morgan came the second time, and 3 or 4 days into afternoon communions, we would just lay in the bed, put our hands together, and see what happens. And all this wild stuff started happening. But the first thing that happened was the Soulogy itself came to us and said, I'm a third energy. I've been birthed. I'll be communicating with you. It presented itself as a golden tree bearing golden fruit and said there'll be many aunties and uncles that will come. And one of the things that it said is that this is a platform for the voices of the Mother Goddess. And at first glance, you think, well, that makes sense. You know, the feminine are leading the way in these light worker circles going back to 2012. But I've come to understand that it's a voice in all of us. We all have that voice. It's been suppressed in one and all, and it just looks different. But the humble, genuine, powerful, beautiful, alchemic, magical, physical incarnation, primarily right now, of the feminine who have been waiting, is starting to come out. And to me, that's the energy that you exude. And so I'm really excited. In fact, I just sent her a note half an hour ago after we had talked a while, and I was like, I'm getting a download. It's got to be this show, because this has been happening more and more. So welcome to the show. Thank you for upfront. Thank you for sticking to it and, bringing your authenticity, your realness. And I just, by the way, on the tail end of that rhythmic occurrence today, I happened to come across a video that you did, and that confirmed everything I need to know. Because by then, I was coming out of my second slumber, my second download, whatever you want to call it. And I was going to get back to your message. I saw it, but I got pulled down again. And I hadn't quite pushed the trigger. But as soon as I saw the first 10 seconds of that video, I went, oh, we got to do this. So I turned it off, sent you the message, and then turned it back on. But yeah, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to meet you. EarthHawk. Is that what you go by? EarthHawk?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, I was shocked at how quickly it came up, because I figured you'd be busy. This might be a couple of weeks. We'd schedule this out. I have time to prepare. And of course, then that gives you time to get nervous and back out. And it's just so beautiful. And Morgan's story that she shared was so beautifully written. And unfortunately, I have my own stories, but we're not gonna share that tonight. So
whatever you want to do is fine with me. I'm good for whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to talk about. There's definitely something going on. There's no doubt. These little, your video, her post, these little things that we think are so small in this polarity, they're the biggest actions we can take. And and whatever the distortion is out there has no match for the voices of the Mother Goddess. It's just not.
Hands down, no choice. And it's incredible when you actually stop and think about everything that it takes behind the scenes to orchestrate the meetings and the coincidences and the synchronicities. And it's like, you have no idea that took months and months and months of planning and pushing you here and pushing you there just to get that one incredible magic moment to happen.
Yeah.
And so when you start looking, it's so beautiful and so incredible and so magical. And for me, myself, I stay very quiet behind the scenes. I've got quite a few people that I've been following. And when the time is right, we will all be getting together, and we have big missions and big things to accomplish. And the time's approaching. And Spirit's been kind of tapping me on the shoulder, and, it's time to go live. And I'm just getting where it's comfortable to letting it blurt out and flow. But I kind of thought what I'd do is go a little bit through my history, because there are so many people out there. And then when people share their stories, they're like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to tell you, beautiful brothers and sisters, you are not alone. You are loved. You are honored and cherished. And you are held and you are supported. I'm not going to cry. So,
you can.
Childhood. I am the oldest of my entire family, the oldest born of the oldest. My entire childhood didn't feel like I fit in or I belonged. weird things would happen, but I always kept them to myself. And I was weird enough and shunned enough that I certainly didn't want to bring anything more to the attention. And then when I was 13, I had to quit all my after school activities, all my extracurricular activities, swim team and Girl Scouts, because my dad traveled and my mom had to go back to work, and she worked swing shift. And then I became the full-time caretaker for my younger brother and sister. And then when I was 15, within 6 months, my dad was killed, my best friend was murdered, and my grandfather passed away. And a lot of responsibilities fell on my shoulders as being the oldest. And within 6 months, I was going to say, my show should come with sensitive subject warning, my first suicide attempt.
Yeah. I
have tried to leave this earth plane more times than I can count. With each attempt being escalated, which meant each time that I survived, just more and more miraculous, to the last one being, okay, obviously I have to stay here, so we better figure out what's going on and why I'm here. Had multiple failed relationships, multiple failed marriages. I used to think that I walked around with a use me and abuse me sign on my forehead. My last relationship was particularly awful. Eventually in 2001, my children and I escaped from Utah to Washington under a protection order. Fortunately, I had family up here with a farm and property and had the room to take us in. And it worked out well because then we were in a small town and simple life. And for being a single mother raising 2 children, it was ideal. To backtrack a little bit, through all of my suicide attempts, it got to the point eventually in 1998 where the doctors just finally said, you're not going to be able to hold a job. You need to go ahead and file for Social Security disability. And now looking back, it's been a blessing because that way I have had an income to have my basic needs met. And yet this has freed me up to do the healing and the work that I genuinely needed to do. And, there's times you get those downloads and those upgrades, you don't move for a day or two, there's just no way. I often wonder how on earth anyone going through this ascension process can hold a regular 9-to-5 job down. So I moved up to Washington with my kids and got involved in a non-denominational Christian church, and things were really good. And, but something just still didn't resonate. It was like, well, this is good, but it's like the hole in my heart was not quite Jesus shaped. It's like it fit in there, but there was still more pieces that needed to go in there. And about 2007, 2008, we had some shifts within our organization. And so my daughter and I decided it was time to look elsewhere. Looked around, couldn't really find anything. And at the same time, I was really starting to pay attention to my dreams. And my dreams seemed to they had a maze theme to them. And it's like if you got to the end of the maze, you got a little crumb or a nugget. And you got a little clue. And I started following these clues and these breadcrumbs. And that led me to start exploring all religions. And I started seeing the similarities. And then I was moved to start going back to my own family roots. And that led me to either my Native American history or my pagan and Wiccan and Druid history. Well, I was going to say I chose the Native American path, but of course it also chose me. I started getting into metaphysics and I went to my first metaphysical fair. And that's where I got introduced to this shamanic group, apprenticeship group. And I got involved in that. And of course, that led me to have my first vision quest. And one of my visions was that I was going to have a great message and be this great speaker. And if anyone knows me, public speaking is not I would rather skydive with my professional brother than speak publicly. And so I thought, okay, we'll see how that goes.
Well, you're doing the same thing. It's just you don't have a parachute on this time.
Exactly. My brother does it the easy way. He has a parachute. And I was at one of our solstice events, and I'm sitting at the end of the table and I'm listening to another woman talk, and she starts talking about walk-ins. And I'm like, oh, cool. And then she's talking about how her last walk-in had been 8 years ago, which would have been 2008. And I'm like, well, hey, that's when my last walk-in was. And when I first discovered the term walk-ins, I figured, okay, I'm a walk-in. I figured with my first suicide attempt, maybe that is when it took place. And so this gal and I got to talking, and she did some healing on me right there. And we kind of became joined at the hip. And we had a meditation group that we were going to every Monday night. And her and I had talked about starting a healing circle, something free offered to the community. And we discovered another group that met on Monday nights. So we decided to take our Monday group on a field trip to this other group. And we get there, and the leader of this group is talking about their modality, their healing modality. They called it running bars. Your skull has all of these pressure points, and where you can tap in and put your fingers, and you can run energy, and you can assist the brain in reversing the programming and the brainwashing that happens in early age. So I'm listening to all this and I'm thinking, yes, this is exactly what I need. So he's like, is there anyone that would be interested? And I've got my hand up. I'm the first one to volunteer. And it's like, he picked someone else. It was like I was invisible. And then he had, I think, 3 beds in the room set up at that time. And they're bringing people back. And I'm just kind of, is it my turn? And they choose someone else. And I'm just like feeling very invisible, like I have most of my life. And finally, it's to me, I'm the last one. And he's like, is there anyone else? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'd kind of like a turn at this. And he's like, oh yeah, look, go put you on the table. So I go in, I lay down on the table, and then everyone goes in the other room and starts having snacks and refreshments. And I'm laying on the table thinking, what on earth is going on? And of course, I can feel the victim mentality bubble up, and I'm invisible, and what's going on? I shouldn't even be here. Well, they finally come in, and I get this sense and this thought, you had to go last. They all had to be cleared before they could even touch you. And they need to recharge before they touch you. And so with that, I took a deep breath and I laid on the table, and they finally came in and started working on me. Well, we continued going to this other Monday group for probably 2 months. And it took 6 weeks of 6 healers working on me before they cracked me open. And they said when they cracked me open, it was like toxic sludge just oozed out like tar. And that night here in Spokane, we had one of the most fantastic lightning storms, and the sky turned green, and I'm primal screaming through the whole thing. Well, then I discovered that I transmute energy. I'm a wash machine. No one told me that. So all 50 years I had been taking it all in and not cleaning it up and sending it back out. So it took another good probably 6 weeks of getting all that toxic sludge out before we could even start to begin the healing process of the energetic connections that I needed to reestablish. One of the other things, because I transmute, I can't take anything for a very long time. Any medications, I build up a tolerance to it within 6 to 9 months. So all of those years of depression, it was like they put me on one thing, 6 to 9 months, it quit working, I'd go back again, to the point where I had been on everything that was out at that point. And so it got to the point where the last option for me was electroconvulsive shock therapy. And I did 4 years of ECT. And we started with 12 sessions to find the right strength. And that was 3 a week for 4 weeks. And kind of like the same way you control, alternate, delete a computer, is what they did to me once a month. And towards the end, it got to be about twice a month. And then I built up a tolerance to the anesthesia and woke up in the middle of one of my treatments. And then they had to completely redo the anesthesia formula. So then we started working on healing the brain from all of the ECT treatments. So then this friend and I start our own healing circle. And, you know, that in itself has enough stories to write a book. But I noticed when she would start speaking her light language, it was like, I already know the words that she was going to say. It was like the words were being said in my head as they were coming out of her mouth, which I thought was odd. And slowly but surely, my own light language started to develop. And I've noticed this with other people who use light language on YouTube or Facebook. It's like, I already know what they're saying as they're saying it, which is really odd. Looking through my notes, let's see if I missed anything.
It's all right, you're good. Janie Hodges is in the house. I believe she's up near you. You're in Spokane?
Oh, yeah.
She might not be that far east, but I just happened to see her.
Who's watching?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's when, you know, my light language started arriving. And you know, there are those that are familiar with what I'm going through and that I can have full conversations on. And then I've got other people that have no clue. And I hadn't shared it publicly until we used to have ecstatic dances before 2020. And the very last ecstatic dance that we had, of course, my role in ecstatic dance is everyone's dancing and releasing. I'm taking it in, cleaning it, and sending it back out. And so I usually end the dance 10, 15 minutes early and go off to the corner and lay down. And as we were having the cool down period, someone started playing a Native American flute. And I can feel the light language, it starts bubbling. And sometimes it becomes, if I try to fight it and stuff it down, it becomes painful and unbearable.
Wow.
And so if I'm laying there thinking, okay, I am about to do, I can't do this, I can't do this. And it's like, I got to do this. And so I just let it flow and got done. And I had a couple people come up and say a few things. And it's like, oh my gosh, that was the first time that I've ever done this. And then this summer, I was teaching some classes at a workshop. And we were having a drum circle jam around the fire pit. And it dropped into just a simple beat. And I had 6 different energies flow through me that night, and 6 different dialects, 6 different messages. There was one time in my living room, one of the very first times, it was about 45 minutes altogether, and I lost track of how many different dialects I spoke. I felt like an interpreter at the UN because there were so many different languages and dialects. There was some that were just simply sign language. There was one that sang the entire thing in opera, light language, but in an opera type form. There's a broken old shaman that's got a broken jaw, you know, and he comes through and my jaw slips to the side and the light language comes through. And I've learned that this light language helps to activate the DNA that is coming online for everyone. My light language also heals. It's powerful. It's sometimes I think it's so much easier. I've got people that I speak only in light language and we know each other, and every now and then we answer in English and every now and then we answer in light language.
Wow.
And I love it because there's no miscommunication. There's no distortion of words. It's pure. It's from the heart, it's from the soul, and it speaks to the heart and the soul. And it bypasses all of those filters created by our traumas.
Mm-hmm.
It bypasses the filters of our perception.
Yeah. Yeah, it speaks to the I don't know if you want to call it the unconscious, but it speaks to the soul. like
Correct.
things, certain things, like even that post she put up last night. I told her, I know, even if, because there was a bit of a shock factor to it, you know,
Yeah.
and you see people do that, and but even if the human aspect is in a bit of resistance or whatever, the soul hears it, especially now. Now you have a multitude of dialects of light language. Of it sounds like it'd be safe to say a multitude of aspects. Do you? I'm just curious. There's no right or wrong answer. I don't know if I've ever asked anybody this. 3,000 shows. I would think I would have, but do you see these as aspects of you, like the shaman with the broken jaw? I mean, do you see them as aspects of you, soul family, or are you, or is it more like you're a cosmic switchboard operator?
Yes, no, and both. I am the walk-ins. Okay. I had another healing, and the gal where I said I mentioned walk-ins, she's like, well, you're currently on number 16. And that my original soul walked out at age 4. And then was it that New Year's Eve, or it might have been the year and a half after that, my original soul that walked out at age 4 came back. But then I started getting more intel that these weren't walk-ins, that these are actually aspects of me.
Yeah.
And then it come to my knowledge that my higher self is a monad.
Yeah.
I am also a galactic ambassador.
Yeah.
So there I have many of my own dialects, yet however, when I do a deep healing or a deep channeling, I know, like a conduit healer, whatever needs to come through me comes through.
It's like a collaboration. Well, I mean, and really, you know, because I mean, some of these conversations can be almost fruitless because we know it all goes back to the one. So it's like,
Correct.
I mean, even talking to you, I'm talking to the goddess, right? I mean, I can break it down, but like what you said, I mean, you become this, you're in this frequency, you're basically pulling from whatever you need to pull from. It may be a less of a conscious effort because you're more like, say, a reception mode or magnetation mode, but it's really, I think, you know, important for me anyway, to remind myself that, you know, Morgan has an old saying, I've said it many times, a copy is a copy is a copy. So if that's how it works, then I'm at the human level, then it will work the same way. And I guess I can reach for any aspect of the Akashic, you know, anything that's out there, anything and everything. But when you do healing, is it specific to certain conditions? Is it more of an approach of, say, bringing in general alignment, regardless of what the condition may be by the client?
It doesn't matter because on that, as far as training, healing goes, in a modality, I have no training. So it's not like I'm a Reiki master or this or that. I just hear what they need. My lower self gets out of the way, and then whatever they need channels through and flows through me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The weirdest thing, for instance, okay, I house sit a lot, it helps supplement my Social Security. And I got a referral for another friend, and I'm house sitting at this house, and she's got this beautiful soaking tub. And I'm like, oh, and I mentioned it, and she says, oh, make yourself at home. If you want to soak in the tub, soak in the tub. So I'd worked all day in the garden, and I'm looking forward to this soak in this tub. And I put in my Epsom salt, my oils, and my crystals, and I go to turn on the water, and I'm feeling the water, and straight hot, I'm only getting cold out of the tap. So I switch it to the other one, and I'm getting cold out of the other tap. And I turn the sink and put the hot water in the sink and go back to the bathtub, and Oh, I'm getting lukewarm. So I'm boiling water and adding it to the tub. Because part of me is logically thinking, I don't want to waste my Epsom salt. I just dumped it in. But then there's part of me that's also thinking, maybe you're not supposed to have this bath if there's no hot water. So I have my bath and I'm cleaning out the tub, and I'm short and it's tall and it's wide. And I'm reaching over and cleaning, and kind of that warning on the bucket where the toddler can fall over upside down. The rug slips out from under me. I fall onto the tub. I crush my sternum. And now I'm upside down in the tub and my feet are up in the air, and the dog is like looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm just laughing and crying, trying to get out of this tub. Well, long story short, okay, I'm healing from this injury, and every injury that I have had in the last, I would say 3 years, has been to open a portal to release something. And they healed very quickly. And this other friend who had given me this referral has had COVID now twice, and now she had bronchitis. And the minute she said bronchitis, the pain in my chest just expanded. And I told her, I says, I know this is going to sound really weird, but I think my injury is connected to your chest. Can I come over and work on you? So I took the bus over to her place. We talked for a little bit. She just laid down on the couch. I got out of my own way. I channeled what needed to channel. I spoke what needed to be spoke. The next day, all of her bronchitis was gone. And the next day, all of the pain from my crushed sternum was gone.
Wow.
And so things like that. In the beginning, one of my other gifts is I can help animals and people when it's their time to cross over. Mm-hmm. And in the very beginning, and displaced souls. And so I would house sit in these houses that perhaps had a ghost or a displaced soul in them. They would end up coming home with me, and then my other friend would help send them to where they needed to be. You know, I've come home with handprints on my ankles, and I've been bit, and I've been infected, and I've had a blue ice pack possessed with an entity.
A day in the life of a starseed.
I know, just these things that anyone else would look at you and think you're crazy, but it's like the rest of us, it's like
crazy isn't crazy anymore. You know that. So it's interesting too, because like you said, through these stories, one, obviously there's that hero's journey aspect, and then two, people, this is all code sharing. I mean, people are at a human level going, hey, it's not just me, I'm not crazy, but also gaining higher alignment through hearing things like this. But this occurrence that you're speaking of, in terms of how things unfold, with no preset disposition, in terms of I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to do that. And it's spontaneous, intuitive, creative, imaginative, telepathic. That I really I think speaks a lot to what's happening now, because it seems to be not just those like you stepping up, but also because of that, there's an amplification to what they offer. I can just see in my mind's eye these different aspects that come through, and in the same pattern, the different aspects pop in to do what needs to be done. Right? I mean, this is higher dimension embodiment. It's happening, and it's pretty wild. I wanted to ask you too, because I think you'd have a good perspective. There's been a lot of changes, rapid changes, to include some of the methods and belief systems we've had that got us to this point. Or let me just change that. Maybe got us to the early 2020, when the energies really began to change. And that would be, some people have talked about the yogi guru teachers, students, kind of gone out, kind of transformed a bit into more of a self-empowerment kind of thing. And I just have a curious mind. And I always wonder things, which makes it great to do this show. But like, you talk about getting healings from other healers, and you also give healings, I would imagine, to other healers you have. Has that changed any? Is it, do you see anything out there? And I'm not saying this is what's happening. I'm just putting an example out there just to kind of, maybe stimulate something. But do you think we're stepping into an atmosphere where just by our mere presence, everything occurs? Or you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's times where we're guided just to be in an area just because that area needs our presence just for that moment. Or, a friend is driving down the street and is guided to turn and drive one block up. I always drive on this street. Why do you want me to drive one block up? You may never know the answer, or you might find out, because that is, your energy needed to be there.
Makes sense. It needed you, or you might have needed it, or both.
Both. Oh, it's always both. I mean, it really is.
How about the so you have, I'm assuming from what you said, you have a Native American, we're talking human lineage, blood lineage, and also it sounds like maybe Celtic or Irish or something from over that direction. Okay. And obviously those are both pretty powerful lineages, at least in our recent past, because there's so much evidence of that. Have you had things occur, past life experiences? I'm just curious, again, just to seek code. In particular, like some of the things you do you find that they're directly associated to the indigenous or to the Celtic or what have you, in terms of, say, rituals or remembrances of certain light languages or songs or that type of thing?
Good question. Not that I can, probably more than I'm consciously aware of. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I used to, and my friends, they're going to be so proud. I find myself very envious of those that have, I would just say, the big gifts, gifts of sight, where they actually hear, the voice. And I would, I'm always to say, well, I don't have that, and I don't have that. And I've got one dear friend, bullshit. You've got more than you know. And as I'm talking to you and I'm writing my notes, it's like, okay, yes, I'm here to admit I have more than I have acknowledged.
Because I mean, and actually I look at your location too, because you're in an area that has a strong presence of the elders, what we call Sasquatch, which has a very deep connection both to our earth journey. There are some that say, and I think it's something to consider, that they were the first of our kind in terms of the physical reality, at least some role in it. And then of course their interdimensional connection. In that area, that just seems like that would be a part of your makeup as well. Do you do any light language of the elders? Have you ever done that?
I do.
Yeah, because I've heard one person do it at a conference, and it was quite amazing.
It's not something that I can forcefully pull forward. It would be something that would have to come through when it was meant to come through. But yes, it would be interesting to speak it in front of actual tribal people to see maybe, how much of the native language is still actually coming through. But yeah.
Well, I'm sure we've got a few in the audience right now if you want to.
Well,
No pressure at all. I'm just, I like to play around on Peter Pan.
yes. Well, and I can feel something, but something bubbling up. So
Yeah.
we will definitely share something tonight.
Yeah, I can feel it too. Yeah, I'm just fine. And so like it sounds like you wrote a pretty good script, really. I mean, you sounds like you moved to an environment, disengaged from some let's just say misaligned energy, if we just keep it out of the personal, right? And you come into somewhat of a community. I think a lot of people know that some of those areas in the Northwest have that characteristic. So you must have been surrounded by a lot of people like yourself. Have you experienced any episodes of like mutual activities, or where things that are not considered from the human perspective as normal? Where there's been another person, because a lot of this. Oh yeah. Can you talk? Can you give a couple of examples? Because I think this is another thing. There's, like you were saying earlier, a lot of us look at other people, and we go, I can't do that, and we overlook like what we can do. And then the other thing is, there are these occurrences, I think, that are happening more and more, where two or more people see or hear or experience the same thing. You have a couple of examples?
I do. Well, the story I shared today about the dragonfly, I had mentioned that our keys had gotten locked in the car because of the UFO. Well, we had gone camping and we had two vehicles, and my friend's little car is a fob, and she had the fobs in the car, and of course the car was not locked. And we got up in the morning and we decided, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this. So we're all kind of, we're going on our walks and we're kind of doing our own thing. And I'm heading back into camp. And all of a sudden, I mean, you could hear planes passing by. You could hear it soft, and then it gets loud and soft. This was not a plane. This was the UFO. It literally powered up and it shot straight up. We did not see it, but we felt it and we heard it. And I come back in, and two of the other three friends, there was four of us all together, they're like, oh my gosh, did you feel that? Did you hear that? I'm like, yes, did you feel that? Did you hear that? And then of course we go to the car to get in. Of course, all my food is in the car and the car's locked. Well, the impulse from the takeoff had activated both fobs and locked him in the car. And so we're like, okay, what are we going to do? And Michael's like, no worries. I'll drive back into town. We'll get a locksmith. No problems, no worries. So I stayed back with my friend's son, who's 18 and autistic. And then the other two went to town to call the tow truck. And I said, this was supposed to happen. We're supposed to have an interaction. I thought the interaction was supposed to be with the tow truck driver. So Josiah and I stayed behind and kind of helped him with his bug issue. And we're just checking out the bugs and the frogs and all the creepy crawlers and checking everything out. And we go down by the lake, and I end up having this encounter with this retired vet that put his boat in the water, but forgot to put the plug in, and the boat started sinking. So that was actually the interaction that was supposed to happen. And then a little later, we're walking down, and Josiah's like, oh, I think they're back. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong vehicle. But I'm like, oh, it's the tow truck. So the tow truck driver comes and gets the car unlocked, but my two friends are nowhere to be seen. I'm like, okay, the tow truck driver's here. And then, of course, all my food had been in that car. And I'm like, oh, I'll just fast today. No biggie. So it was about an hour later that my ex or friends showed up. And that's when we finally put the kayaks in. One of my favorite, though, there was a group of four of us that used to get together. We had a Wednesday night healing. Well, it was a different type of group, but we would stay afterwards. And primarily, we were working on global issues, local issues here in Spokane, anything that needed our attention. And there was one night where we got done and we were all pinned to the floor and couldn't move. We were froze, stuck in place. And this has happened many occurrences. And yet the four of us are talking in light language. And this was before my light language came on. So they're talking in light language. We're all cracking jokes and laughing and having a good time, but we're pinned to the floor and can't move. Many stories of that.
I wonder what that was.
I have no idea. Even one of the friends had fantastic sight, but even he was clueless to what was completely going on at that time.
And you said a lot there, by the way. You said a lot there, like you know, maybe on a different platform or 5 years ago, there were that whole set of stories would have been a lot longer, because there was things you were saying in the story that, you know, I don't want to say we take for granted, but it's more common speak here. But one of the things you said too that kind of struck me was, you said we get together to work on global issues, community issues, and such. Did you apply, let's just say, for lack of a better term, metaphysics to that approach, or was it something more conventional?
It was, I think, more guidance from one of the other members.
But I mean, so you would use your energy in, let's just say, well, obviously in a conscious way, but let's just say from the human perspective, a non-traditional way. Would you do it through meditation or group focus or that type of thing?
Meditation. Yeah. Just getting together, holding hands, and start breathing, and we leave our bodies and we're gone and we're off doing whatever we need to do.
That's cool.
I kind of always felt left out because I didn't have the visual. My groups, my gifts weren't completely, or they still aren't completely, but they hadn't quite blossomed yet. And yet I was an important, integral part of that team. Yeah. There's so much my higher self does. I'm so busy at night in the astral.
Yeah, that's. Have you found that connection or continuation or recall has increased this year, maybe these last few weeks, where you're bringing that information into your conscious memory banks more, you know, and with more clarity than the subtle flashes that we would get, you know, from before?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit more. I find myself, whatever is happening in the astral, right before I wake up, it almost transitions into the dream. And like if I'm speaking, then it's the thought process I'm speaking as I wake up. It's like it continues, the conversation continues from the astral and my dream into my waking thought. Yeah. Kind of like how some people wake up with the dream with the song in their head. Mine are carryover conversations of whatever I was doing before I wake up.
That's interesting. Like daytime sleepwalking, sleep talking. Mine's been like, and happening to me again this morning, like this getting thrown back into the body. You know, remembering some of the details, and a lot of the details, like last night of the lucid dream, you know, to where you could literally just write it down, you know, moment by moment. But this, what's stronger is this, and it's been this way as long as I can remember, but it's just so much more, you know, like in the memory bank. And that's this speed, the speed of the work, the moving around, the movement, the swish, 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 going here, doing that, going here, doing that, and then getting thrown back into the mortal body. And just your eyes come open and you're just like, holy shit. Like, you know what I mean? It's like landing, like a hard landing. And it's not a bad thing, but I've just noticed it's happened about 6 times, I would guess, in the last 2 months.
For me, it feels like I'm a deep sea diver and I'm coming up too fast. It's like I come up and I pop out of the water when I wake up. Wow. Not sure if that's any.
Well, you know, no, I think that is. And again, these are the reasons we talk about it, because I have met a lot of people who talk about, like the people of the deep blue. They talk about swimming a lot. You know what I mean? So there's a very aquatic frequency to what they're carrying over.
Mhm.
You talk to you talk to other people, they talk about flying around.
Yeah.
Mine would be, something like flying around, but almost like in between. Like it's hard to explain for me anyway. But yeah, I think that is important because again, how many people have had something similar to what you're talking about with your own experience, and how many people have had that sitting on the tip of the mind's tongue, that your words pull them across the bridge. So this seems to be really important, I guess is what I'm saying. When you think of the voices of the mother goddess, you think of testimonies and you think of other things, but I'm so amazed about how it's always the little things. It's always the things we look past that are the gold. Just like you said, I can't do this, but oh, by the way, yeah, you know what? I can do a lot. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So it's always important. Everything's relevant.
It's kind of like my friend when we were, where were we? I think we were at Target along with her son and their friend. And we were going to go to the fair, but decided to stop and run in and get something real quick. And my friend set her keys down on one of the shelves. And then, of course, we get partway through the store and then she realizes she doesn't have her keys. And my first reaction was, we're not supposed to go to the fair. I didn't know why. I just knew we weren't supposed to go to the fair. We found the keys. The kids eventually went to the fair, but her and I eventually came back, I think, and ended up doing some energy work. It's kind of like, when I met the healer that told me about the 16 walk-ins, we were at fall equinox ceremony. We had just had our shamanic ceremony and we're getting ready to leave. And they've got my ride has a hole in their tire. And my first thought is, we're not supposed to be on the road yet. And she's like, we're here for you. For me? Why for me? So her and I had a session while the guys worked on fixing the tire. And that's when she had mentioned that. And the other thing that I have discovered is with people who've met me or healers that have worked on me. In fact, I only know one healer now just recently I'm veiled. My true full expression of who I am, what I am, what I'm meant to do is veiled to some level and to some degree to most people. I only have one friend who, one of our last Reiki sessions, where she got to actually see the full me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know that yet. It's still kind of veiled to me.
How do you, and this is another thing I think that people get challenged with. I for one think we're writing the template. Like we've taken the Akashic, we've remembered enough of it, and now we're writing new template, new code, whatever. But on that note,
yeah.
like in terms of, because you give and receive healings. You give and you haven't said give, but you definitely receive information from others in regard to like what you just talked about. How do you figure out what you take on and what you don't, even if it's, say, from somebody you really trust? Like, say you really trust me and I'm a healer and I come in and tell you, A, B, or C, or all the above, or whatever. Do you have a process? Is it strictly intuitive? Do you just take it based on the connection you have? I think these are the type of things that people are coming to as we move from that kind of, codependent disempowerment. And none of that sounds bad, but that's what got us here. And there's stages of everything into full empowerment. I can do all this myself kind of thing. How does that work for you?
I take what resonates with me, or I've got all of my little crumbs that I've gathered personally. And so then, of course, I take what others tell me and weigh it against, the crumbs that I have. Now, mind you, on low energy days and down days, which I still have, my mini black nights of the soul.
Oh, you do?
Oh,
I don't think anybody out there does anymore. You're the odd one out now.
my first dirt night of the soul was 35 years. I'm ready for a vacation. However, on those days, it all goes out the window.
Yeah.
The self-doubts come in.
Yeah.
The gentleman that Adam that douses for a lot of the people that are on your show, he had some different information and disagreed with some of the things that I know to be true. And, there's part of me that's like, oh, well, maybe not. And of course, that added to this, it's like, if he's telling you one thing and I'm telling you one thing, what's going to happen? So
this is now I realize where that question came from.
I just, on a good positive day, I can't let that get in.
Well, I mean, I think this is part of what's happening. We think it's the woo-woo. Each one of us has, I'm a big believer, and I will go to my grave. Whatever somebody receives is first meant for themselves, period. Anything that can be taken and assimilated to other people is a plus. But the minute it comes out of us, it's losing its full alignment. There's just the human part of it, right? Now, Adam's a good friend of mine. He's been around Soulogy for a while, and I've told him before, that's your truth. Like, I'll give you an example. And if you're watching, Adam, I love you. Full respect, honor, and reverence. This is all of us trying to learn. We all have ego, and we all have been in that place where we think that our way is the only way. Well, I got news for you. We all eat humble pie too, and this is one of the reasons. But what I'm trying to say is that, for instance, we did a session the other day, and there was, I think, 3 activations, and we publicized it. We were led to publicize it, so we did. He went in and then he sent me a note, and he was like, this isn't about Adam, everybody. This is about what we're all faced with, what people call discernment. I don't like that word, but alignment, personal alignment. And he said something like, well, that wasn't activated in you, but now it is, something to that effect. So my point is always, hey, this is your truth, where you're coming from. I have my own truth. And I think we're now in the upper echelons of moving into self-empowerment, where, like everything else on this trip, becomes an all or nothing proposition, and there's no in between. So on one hand, you have this pure sacred wisdom, or whatever it is, coming out of an individual, be it me, you, Adam, anybody else, and it is gold for me. Now, beyond me, it can have some gold to it, but it's not going to be in the 100th percentile, because that's coming from, another way to put it would be, there's 7.8 Earths, 7.8 billion Earths, and there's 7.8 billion souls walking it. You know what I mean? So, but I think it's important to talk about these things. I know it makes people uncomfortable at times, but that's why I asked you the question, because you've got a pretty good wealth of experience, and you're down to earth, and I think most of us are these days. But I just think it's interesting, and I think it has something to do as well with what we know about dimension and not infringing. Like, when do we stop serving, and put, put it, in other words, if you've got it contained within your frequency, you really don't have to say anything, do you? That's what, going back to the question earlier, do you think we're going to get to a place where we don't have to say anything or do anything or go through a ritual, or we just actually, like tuning forks, stand next to each other and move on?
Well, and I think I was watching, what was it? one of last week's podcasts on YouTube, one of the things that I have been waiting for personally is, I know we're getting to the point, especially with those that are, I don't want to say purely tapped in, but I would think that, the closer we get to this culmination of events, that the messages that people are channeling are going to start to become similar,
Yes.
united.
Yeah.
And mentioned where someone will get a download and then all of a sudden you start seeing several people on Facebook or YouTube
Yes.
that have the same download, whether they interpret it, the same or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, because I've known for a while that there's got to come a point, and all the backbiting and the infighting between the energy workers and can't we all just get along? It's like,
yeah.
We're supposed to be setting the example here, right?
I mean, and that's really the thing too, is there is if there's not unity, it starts with me. We all know it's never them, it's always me. So if there is a point of contention, all we have to do, in my mind, I'm speaking to myself, because I've been like everybody else. I've been there, done that, right? And we just keep moving on. But it's so much of this stuff, really all of it, it's all great. The woo-woo's great, but the human is the last piece. So the human actually has to consciously, responsibly. So if there's a point of contention, it becomes the chicken and the egg. And the only way to from my mind, to dissolve that is to take a step back and say, I'm just going to let my frequency speak for myself, because I may be right about it and I'm doing great, or I may be wrong. And either way, keep my mouth shut. And it's a slippery slope, and it's a fine line. And obviously the throat chakra is an important aspect of our present evolution. So
definitely. Well, in the beginning, I wanted to wake the world up. I wanted to shake everyone by the shoulders and bop them on the head. It's like, thou shalt not bop them on the head.
Yeah.
It's like, but you want there's so much wonderful love and joy and release and unburdening. Why wouldn't you want every single person to be able to share it? And it occurred to me this morning, as our dimensions are pulling apart and splitting, it's like the Truman Show. There are so many who are living in the studio, and there are so many of us that are living outside of the studio, and there's some of us that have one foot in both, inside and outside.
That's a great analogy.
Thank you. That popped up to me this morning. That's great. You are not going to convince those that are still in the studio that they're in a show. Yeah. And until they break through that wall, until they start following their own crumbs, until they have their own aha moment. And again, I also realize there are many, many souls that came only to witness what is occurring. Yeah. They're not going to go any further, but the memory of what occurs will be in their Akashic records. So when it's their time to move forward, they have it.
And who's to say that for every crumb you think they haven't picked up, there's not one that you are unaware of within yourself? There's this crazy yin yang, what's up is down, paradoxical place or field that will humble you. It will humble you one way or the other. And so, but it's what you're saying is true. I saw a meme the other day. I send a lot of memes into the Soulogy group every day, and I don't get a chance to memorize them, and I don't get a chance to save them and pull them up. But it was a bit wordy for me. But it was really good, because it said, keep in mind that everyone here is at a different state of their evolution. Now, like many people, I've always understood when I've received from the beginning that there is no hierarchy, but there is a maturation level. Now, it depends on what end of the spectrum you're standing in as to who's making the determination. And again, here we go with the yin yang and the paradox. But nevertheless, that everybody is at a different level of maturity. And so a kind of to me, a higher frequency band of stay in your own lane, and, I make the joke of, everything's fine if I get out of the way and shut the F up. But it's really, I could say it another way, which would be get over yourself. Todd, get over yourself. That's a conversation, honestly, that I've had more and more in the early part of my day. In other words, it's check yourself, yourself, go do something that's menial or just go into it, because we can do things in our head, but yeah, it's such a, even like the energy of the last 24 hours, I am so excited and so proud of all of us. And at the same time, it's check yourself because humility is waiting around the corner for you,
Definitely.
But I wouldn't be anywhere else in the multiverses today. This is amazing with what we've done. And I think part of the reason that we might have this inclination to want to tell everybody, like you see that's a light worker symptom. Somebody that wakes up a year, 2 years, and they want to tell their family, and they put up posts, and the posts are like, my family won't listen to me. They all think I'm crazy. But I think it's because of the longevity, the how long, this is a cycle, coming to a culmination of cycles, right?
Yes.
Like they talk about the 26,000 years or whatever. That's just the energy metaphors to me. But I can see that. And again, what you said about yourself, it's the intention that matters.
Yes, definitely.
It's the intention that matters. So,
Well, and, like I said, I had 35 solid plus years, pretty much of solid depression. My poor children, unfortunately, as I started coming into my own and healing, my children have disowned me. I'm not easily manipulated. I don't have the buttons to push. They think I'm into woo-woo and scary stuff. And my grandkids, they need to be protected against me, which is really sad because I know my grandsons are healers. I've known that since he was 4 years old. We were at the wedding and I'm spinning all the kids, and all the next thing I know, they got this whole line of kids to spin. And I get done and Kason comes back up to me and he's spin me, Nana. And like, Nana needs a break. And he says, I'll help you. And he reaches up and he starts brushing my aura. And I am just filled with emotion. It's like, oh my gosh, However, I'm always hoping that they'll wake up and they'll see, because it's like, how I would hope that, they saw me depressed all their lives, that they would hope to see me happy and fulfilled and healthy. But, that's neither here nor there.
This is another, this subject is as good as any that will come out on this show. It's the real thing. So it's like you said, some have their foot in one and the other both at the same time. And I really don't see how, I think that represents the 0 point. That represents the middle ground. I know we have some, like what you said a minute ago, that are high frequency, and they tend to be very singular, like one singular function, which, here in the middle, not to say that anything's better than the other, because how do we know what it looks like? But in this time, it just seems like there's more substance in that blend of the human and the woo-woo. But this is a big issue. I've got 6 kids. I got one that's, I haven't talked to in a long time. You know, I'm blocked on Facebook. I have no conversation. But and then the extended family. I mean, I've been out, you know, outside the circle for a long time. But I think that's the case for most everybody here, and I think most everybody here is dealing with that. And I guess at some point, as painful to our human aspect as it might be, but as liberating to it as it will be, is not my circus, not my monkeys. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you said, you can't be triggered, you can't be pushed, you can't hurt your soul anymore, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, what's the saying? Let's see. You don't want to be so spiritual that you're no earthly good.
What's the point? We have that. We came into that. We came into this with that. I love it, you know, and it is a learning experience for everybody. But this information, like even hearing you, which I hear all the time, I can do this and I can do this and I know I was this and I know I was that. I remember telling Morgan 5 years ago, hey, you know what? This happened to me. This is when we first getting to know each other, you know, and I'm in the Great White Brotherhood, and you know, and I have this connection with Jesus and the Archangel, and she'd say, well, why do you want to limit yourself? And I would just go, you know, like, okay, you know, like that's like, okay, that says it all. That
Yeah.
like that says that statement, it covers our journey here. It covers our reality, what we call our reality, because I'm a Republican, or I'm an American, or I'm Hispanic, or I'm a male, or whatever, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think this is the kind of, you know, boots on the ground embodiment that we've come down to. And this is what I love, because this year I've seen, and you're a great representation of it. The person walks in, they've got multiple connection, they're coming out. So there's this pure, innocent exuberance. And yet there's down to earth as down to earth can be, you know, like they're just, and to me, that's what's working. That's what people are responding to. And I think that's got to be, again, that mother goddess energy, you know, that energy that never gives up on the kid.
You know, thank you for that comment of being so down to earth, because that would not be a way that I describe my, you know, so many people, oh, she's so woo-woo, she's so out there, she's so crazy. You know, I've got the certificate and the straight jacket to prove it. And so, you know, the whole down to earth, and thank you.
Down to earth. But that is down to earth. How many people here do you think have been in the psych ward or jail? You know, I mean, it's, you know, how many people here have either attempted or suicide, or lived extremely dangerously and put themselves in extremely dangerous situations, you know? I mean, I had a day 5 days ago, and this has been a very elevating time for me. This past, let's just say this month, you know, Morgan and I, we separate energetically at times. We had a long separation for about 10 days. So there was a lot of, but there was a 2-hour period. I was like, get me the hell out right now. I'm done. And if you don't do it, but I mean, I wouldn't do it, but I was trying to bluff them just to make something happen. But you know what I mean? I mean, this is real. Just like you said earlier, I have my days where I'm tired. You know, I think a lot of us are becoming aware that when we don't have the serotonin level, when we don't get enough sleep, that we might project, or we might react. And you said something to that effect earlier. I mean, so that's real. That's real. That's no mask. That's, I'm owning my human, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So, and I see a lot of it today, and it's from those that are mostly back here, right? They stand right to the back a little bit, have comments, but that's the majority.
Which is
That's
odd, because my entire life I've been sit in the front of the class kind of person. because I found, well, it started because I needed glasses, but then it became that the classes were all one-on-one. It became private with the whole class sitting behind me. It was like private interaction with the teacher or instructor or whatever workshop. And so this whole aspect of kind of staying in the fringes and keeping track of everybody and sending love here and energy there. And, oh, you've almost got it, but, you know, cheering them on. And yeah.
And now you're coming out because you've already had the prophecy. You're going to be a public speaker, you know, and here we go.
Here we go.
But anyway, if you would like to do something, whatever I can do, I mean, I can hold space and I can connect. We all can, or whatever you want to do. And you don't have to do anything. If you don't feel that rumbling coming out, then we'll just do it again some other time.
Let me take a couple deep breaths and see what's going to come forth.
That's fine. And if you want to say a prayer or whatever you want to do, sing, dance, doesn't matter to me.
Oh, that's a funny thing. I've got voices that like to sing, and my human still kind of chokes up on that.
There's been a lot of firsts on this show, a lot of coming out.
Kare sun ko kai shere sundata hi hira mota kire se nukoya. Tare sun ko tatai shere mukata histe mota sele und aro gunta resulutu kunt aira pa hea. Tare sun to kota hi shiranda su ta karera mota sere tiene ke auto to hoshera husara te hine hira potatai shire su to kotirana. Tare e kuto te shira ta steba to kera mota ishira u. Para sutkota ini te sutia. Sharo usutu kunukaro suya. Para asana kotai sela tutu kuni kira tata mutaya. Para usare tere sutu kun katai tirsuno koti anakasa. Tare sela tuti pese kotatai shirin sut kararisi la potaini ya. Para sala tu. Karara suko ye sele leutono kai kiramo. Tane kiela tutuku kiramaso. Kai sela tuta she e tara sunichera mutaya.
Gracias.
I think that's it.
That's good. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. So have you set up a speaker schedule yet?
A what?
A speaker schedule. I'm just messing with you. Hey, it's been a pleasure. I love the flow and I love the way this came together today. And I really appreciate your down to earthiness and your woo woo and your light language and you. That's what I see happening. You know, it's so crazy because I like to simplify everything. And it just like, oh, you mean it's like having a conversation with your higher self. Like, you mean all I got to do is just be me? Yeah, I've been trying to tell you for 59 years.
We just got to unbury what the me is. You know, we just got to unbury.
Yeah, that's I keep saying this because I thought it was so profound. Our friend Taino from Puerto Rico, he came on and it was like this. He's been in the background. He came on and he says, we're finding out what it is to be human. And I said, okay, well, that's not like rocking. And then he said, but we don't know what it is. And I was like, oh, now that makes sense, right? So yeah, that's pretty much what I got from you right there. Listen, I wish you the best. I think Janie Hodges said she's near you. And she said Spokane's not too far. She's a beautiful lady, been hanging around this community for a long time.
Sweet. And, send me a friend request.
Yeah. And there's actually a lot of people out that way. Angie Parker, I see her here. She's doing the van thing. And I know she's been up there. We actually visited her up there in Portland when she was up that way. But yeah, so anyone that's on the replay of the live that's in or near Spokane and wants to go on a little hiking trip with the elders, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? But yeah, so just
Most
give her a holler.
definitely.
Yeah. So and your name on Facebook is what? What is it? How do you?
Michelle EarthHawk Kaye. I think
That's right.
eventually I'm going to be dropping the birth name and
Okay.
just going with EarthHawk.
I'm going to tag it on the show itself. Michelle EarthHawk Kaye, Kaye. I love you. I appreciate you. Peace
Love you
out,
too.
everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you when we see you. All right. Bye-bye.